Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
My name is Desi.
Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case, please report it to your local police and sheriff department. Disclaimer: this video is not recommended for persons under the age of 18 years old and will contain some very graphic details. If you are under the age of 18 years old or cannot handle graphic details, please click off now.
Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks, and when she sees what she had done, she gave her father 41. Today we will be unlocking the trial of the 19th century involving Lizzie Borden, which takes place in Fall River, Massachusetts.
So who exactly is Lizzie Borden? So her full name is Lizzie Andrew Borden. She was born in Fall River, Massachusetts on July 19th, 1860. Her parents are Sarah Anthony and Andrew Jackson Borden. She also has an older sister named Emma. Her father, Andrew Borden, is a very wealthy man. His net worth in today's money would be equivalent to $10 to $15 million. And what he did for a living, which does not surprise me, is he was an entrepreneur and he was a businessman. Some of the businesses that he worked in was textiles and real estate. However, Andrew Borden was a very frugal man.
The house that they lived in was completely opposite of what this man's net worth was worth. Basically, everything was very small. They had no indoor plumbing or running water for at least a while. The father was a cheapskate and could only eat certain foods, like canned goods. He was very cheap about the furniture, and the father always looked for a bargain. His daughters were obviously very frustrated with how frugal he was. The girls always wanted more, which is expected, of course, considering, how much their dad made and all that stuff. And I'm sure they saw all these other people around them that had more things than they did, of course. But Lizzie's cousin lived nearby on a hill, and of course Lizzie wanted a life like her cousin, who had tea parties and a nice house and a fun environment unlike her home.
Something also to note about this is that you can actually visit the Borden house in person. So it is located in Massachusetts, and it was actually turned into a bed and breakfast, so you can actually stay overnight. However, I don't know if I would stay overnight, but that's just me. So Lizzie's mother, Sarah, actually passed away when she was very young. Andrew decided to remarry a woman named Abby. Some people refer Abby to the evil stepmother, kind of like how Cinderella has an evil stepmother. However, many people still say that Abby was indeed a good stepmother.
Lizzie publicly hated her stepmom, Abby. Everyone said that Lizzie was sweet and she wouldn't harm a fly, but she did okay in school, not terrible, but not great. She was very involved in her church. She would steal things, of course, and the father told the owners that if she stole, just to charge him money and let her go. She taught Sunday school to immigrants, and Emma was like a mother figure to her.
So later on, Andrew gifted a bunch of real estate homes that he owned to people. However, Lizzie and Emma were very unhappy because considering their father literally could have given them more but chose to give somebody else more is what really frustrated them, especially because their house was really small and they felt like they didn't have enough space. There was a point of time where Lizzie did kind of disconnect from her family, and she refused to eat meals with them. She refused to really spend family time playing games with them. Lizzie and Emma did stop talking at one point. August 4th, 1892. Emma was visiting friends out of town. It was your typical day, and the family had been sick for a couple days.
Supposedly it was food poisoning that had been from eating soup for 4 days, which could have made them sick if it had been bad. But the theory for this is that somebody was trying to poison them. They got up that morning and the maid, her name was Bridget, her nickname was Maggie, the maid had cooked soup and made pancakes, and she was very ill as well. Uncle John was also there for breakfast. and John left around 8:48 a.m. to buy a pair of oxes.
9 a.m., Andrew left the house for his casual walk. He decided to go in town and check on a couple businesses that he had. During that time, Abby, the stepmother, went to clean the guest room upstairs, and then Lizzie was downstairs in the dining room doing laundry and ironing the clothes. Andrew eventually did come home for a nap, and then Lizzie at some point did leave the house to meet up with her neighbor, Adelaide Churchill. And apparently, when she met up with this neighbor, she told Churchill that her father had been killed. Her neighbor decides to go inside the house with her, and there they find Andrew covered in blood. He had obvious blunt force trauma to his face. It was obvious that someone had hit him multiple times. However, Churchill does state that there was no blood on Lizzie or her clothes.
The maid is obviously horrified when she finds all this. The maid, Churchill, and Lizzie go upstairs where Abby is. Abby had been hit from behind, had at least 19 blows to the head, back of her head had been jacked up. The police were called, and obviously they were shocked. They thought a serial killer did it. Police officers that day did interrogate Lizzie, and police also talked to the community. No one saw anything strange, such as stalkers. A couple witnesses later on say there was a man angrily banging the door, and it is obviously not confirmed. So why do you think there was a man angrily banging at the door?
So if there was a man that was angrily banging at the door, it was probably something to do with Lizzie's father, Andrew. Like I said, he was an entrepreneur and a businessman, and he did give away some real estate, and he had a lot of money. Obviously, if this man was at the door, he was probably trying to get a hold of Andrew, or maybe he was trying to rob Andrew because Andrew had a buttload of money.
Makes sense.
Lizzie Borden as a suspect. So one thing police do know is whenever they were investigating, it doesn't really look like anyone broke in. Like there's no broken glass or anything. You would think you would find that. Lizzie was the only one in the household that could have been guilty because obviously the father was dead, the stepmother was dead, and then the sister was out of town. Uncle John had also left after breakfast. And they were killed after he left, obviously, because the father left at 9 a.m. to go on his walk, and then a couple hours later came back. So it couldn't have been Uncle John. August 6th, Abby and Andrew were both buried. At the investigation for the crime scene, there was multiple doctors, criminal investigators, police officers walking through the house. But at this time, unlike today, the scene was not well preserved. That's a big reason why this case has not been officially solved. Do you think that Lizzie Borden committed these murders?
I think it's very possible she could have committed these murders, especially because it had appeared that nobody had broke in. But it also could have just been like she was at the wrong
place, wrong time.
And maybe just didn't hear anybody break in, or somebody found a different method of getting inside.
Yeah, that's true.
But police did figure out Abby was killed prior to Andrew, roughly about an hour and a half before. And when Andrew's body was found, he had just been killed. Blood oozed out of his body, and it was warm to the touch. But Abby was covered in dried up dark blood. Police questioned Lizzie if she had heard anything, and she, of course, said she didn't hear anything. How could Lizzie have not heard anything?
Definitely think that is a little suspicious that Lizzie didn't hear anything, considering how brutal these murders were, because you would think if they were hit with, a hatchet or an axe or some type of tool like that, obviously you would have heard that, because that is awful, and I'm sure you would have heard screams coming from both parents whenever they were being killed. So I definitely think that's suspicious, and I think that Lizzie is definitely hiding something and definitely lying about saying that she did not hear anything.
Could the actual killer have been let in prior to the murders? It would explain why it didn't look like anyone had broken in.
So it is very possible that if it was not Lizzie, it could have been someone else that probably knew her father Andrew, so maybe it was a friend of his or something. Maybe he did invite somebody over. That is why we don't see like any broken glass or anything. That is like possible, but it's not as likely. And if it is, he would have had known the person.
It makes sense, yeah.
So, possible motives into why Lizzie would have killed her father and her stepmother. Like we mentioned, Lizzie and Emma wanted to live in a really nice house. I mean, their dad had shit ton of money, but he was a total cheapskate. Lizzie, prior to the murders, she actually found out from her dad that he was going to give the house to Emma, knowing that could have easily upset her. And Lizzie, she did feel like an entitled little bitch. Stole from places and her dad just said, put it on my tab. So clearly she was very entitled. Lizzie did not have the best relationship with her stepmom. What is really weird is that the house itself did not have a lot of blood everywhere. Considering how awful these murders, you would think that there would be splatters of blood everywhere. There wasn't, except for on the bodies. However, investigators do find some blood on Lizzie's underwear, but she claims it was pure blood, which could be a very valid reason, and like they were unable to test it back then because they didn't have the technology that they have today. If Lizzie killed her parents, what is the most likely motive?
I feel like it was probably because she hated her stepmom and her dad did not give her the best life, didn't give her the nicest house, didn't give her really anything that she wanted. She just decided that it would be easier for her to kill them.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Lizzie could have cleaned up the house? Hence, that is why there was little to no blood around except for on the bodies.
Yeah, I think it's very possible she could have cleaned up the house. I'm sure she would have figured out a way or known how to clean up blood.
Right, and this is also like way back then. I'm sure I don't know how the emergency responses were back then, but I'm sure they're not nearly as fast as today. So she would have definitely had the time.
No, they probably took hours just to get to somewhere.
Yeah.
Especially with murder scenes and all that stuff.
Definitely.
The day after the funeral, Lizzie had burned a dress possibly over a stove or fireplace. Dresses are very expensive, so this would be kind of peculiar as to why she would have burned it. But her excuse was that it had been stained with paint and why she burned it, which is kind of weird. Because you would think she would just wash it out, but I guess not, in her eyes. But the investigators found a box of tools in the attic, but the only thing that they found was the head of a hatchet, and there was ash on it. Police theorized that Lizzie actually burned the hatchet, and that's why there was ash. Why would Lizzie burn a dress with just paint stains on it?
So the reason why Lizzie probably burned this dress was not just because the paint stains. Those paint stains were probably actual blood stains from killing her parents, and she just thought that she burned it from paint is an easy excuse. However, it just makes her look even more suspicious.
Yeah, it definitely does. She shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, that was stupid.
A little bit.
So, apparently, Lizzie, prior to the murders, actually tried to get hands on prussic acid from the doctors. And if you guys don't know, basically this acid is colorless, it's extremely poisonous and flammable. She claimed to the doctors she needed it because she had coats made out of sulfur, which I found very strange. And apparently she wanted this acid to either use to clean the sulfur or preserve it, which I think is bullshit. Doctor refused to prescribe her this acid, so she threw a fit. From the police, after hearing this, they figured out that maybe she was going to attempt to poison the parents with food. But obviously it didn't work because she never got access to that acid. So since that didn't work, apparently they think that's why she hit them to death. Do you think Lizzie wanted to purchase prussic acid to poison her parents?
I think so. I don't think she would have asked for it just to clean coats or preserve coats made out of sulfur. I'm sure she could have found other methods to seal or clean them. Right. So I feel like it was just a cover-up to get a hold of this acid to put in some food.
Right, and I've never even really heard of a coat made out of silk. I know that there are, but it just...
It's not as common nowadays. It's
Yeah.
more like back then, of course. But on August 8th, there was an inquest hearing. And of course, Lizzie was given morphine before the hearing, which you can't get prescribed the amount that she did. Her personality was very off. She did change her story multiple times, and police had a feeling that she was guilty. On August 11th, Lizzie had a warrant for the arrest for the murders. And 10 months later, June 5th, 1883, trial began in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And this case was obviously huge because she was a woman, and this wasn't very common back then.
Yeah, so many people think that women cannot kill, but oh my gosh, yes they can. Basically, at the trial, the investigators did bring both Abby and Andrew skulls in the courtroom, which Lizzie fainted at the sight of that. The prosecutors decided to compare the marks on these skulls to the hatchet head that they found in that attic. And yes, it indeed fit. However, the defense came and they were like, there's not enough physical evidence. They also talked about how Lizzie did not have much blood on her, or any blood on clothes. And they also mentioned, how did no one catch her in that act?
Yeah, which is weird. But Lizzie, her sister Emma, did testify and said the dress was not burned, that Emma claimed that Lizzie did not want to burn it, but it was her that wanted to. Lizzie did not testify, and the trial lasted 3 weeks. Lizzie had said, quote-unquote, that she is innocent. I will let my counsel speak for me, end quote. And the jury made up their mind in 2 hours. They said that she was not guilty. But why would Emma want to burn the dress?
So why would Emma want to burn the dress? So I do think it is interesting how Emma came out saying, she wanted to, burn the dress. There's only a couple things I can think about is Emma just wanted to come at her sister's defense and just get the jury to not prosecute her sister, so she went and pleaded. Or the other option was Emma wanted to burn the dress because that was the dress that Lizzie had killed her parents in, and Emma thought it would be a smart idea. It might be a smart idea for Lizzie to burn the dress. That's pretty much the only thing I can think of.
Okay. Even though it states at the time that Emma was supposedly out of town, do you think Emma still could be involved in these murders somehow?
I mean, it is possible. There are obviously a lot of witnesses, though, and her friends able to say that she was out of town. But I know back then that the crime scene, obviously, people were walking all over it. It was not preserved really well, so they couldn't have even tested the DNA at all because everything was messed up. So they couldn't even test if Emma was involved or not. You can't completely rule that out.
Yeah, that's what I think too as well.
So whenever they yelled not guilty, Lizzie fainted. I mean, obviously she probably done it, so she was probably like, what? And the entire courtroom cheered and they were so excited. She was a free woman. Lizzie and Emma inherited $350,000, which is equivalent to $10 million in today's money. Obviously, they were set for life. With this money, they went and they bought their dream house on a hill and named it Maple Croft. And then what is kind of strange is that Lizzie changed her name to Lizbeth.
That's a weird ass name to change your name to.
It definitely is. She is a weird person.
Obviously. But obviously she had a hard time making friends because some people, of course, still believe she got away with murder. Her old church actually banned her, and in 1897 she was accused of shoplifting. Her own sister Emma eventually left the house after several arguments, and Emma refuses to talk about her childhood. Some people believe that some sort of abuse happened, and maybe that's why Lizzie killed her parents.
There are other rumors as well that there was incest in the house, which I wouldn't put it past it because, the times back then were different. Andrew's eyes, whenever his body was found, they were gone. So people do theorize that she took his eyes because he saw stuff he shouldn't have. However, again, there's no solid proof that that is why his eyes are gone. It's just rumors. Now, Lizzie had dogs. She never decided to get married or have kids, and I'm sure it would have been difficult to find somebody. In 1927, Lizzie died from pneumonia, and then 9 days later, her sister died from kidney failure in New Hampshire.
Both girls have been laid to rest next to their father and stepmom Abby in Oak Grove Cemetery and Fall River. Lizzie left $30,000 to Fall River Animal Rescue, which is equivalent to $600,000 today, and spent $10,000 on her father's grave to make sure it was well maintained. So the question still remains, did Lizzie kill her parents? Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open because you never know when someone is going to hack your head with a hatchet.